Hey folks, before we get to the episode, I want to invite you to this month's International Directors Meetup, our monthly gathering of directors and theater makers from around the world. It's a space to share experiences, trade advice, and find support in what can often be a pretty isolating role. You can come and go as you need, drop in late, leave early, whatever fits your schedule. It's simply a chance to set aside time each month to sit alongside others who understand the work. For dates, times, and details, head to boardofdirectors.world and pull up a chair at the table. Join the board. Some artists evolve in ways that feel surprising. And then there are artists whose evolution feels inevitable, like they've simply grown more and fully into something that was always there. Irina Kruzhilina is one of those artists for me. We first met in 2009 at La Mama Umbria International when she was working primarily as a designer, but already thinking deeply about space, image, and how visual language tells a story. Even then, you could feel that her work was reaching beyond the boundaries of design towards something more expansive. Over the years, as we lost touch and then reconnected, I watched her step fully into that space. Not just as a theater maker, but as an artist deeply engaged with the world around her. Her work now lives at the intersection of performance, activism, and education. From supporting Ukrainian artists to creating projects with refugee communities, always grounded in collaboration and a belief that art can humanize, connect, and cut through barriers. In this conversation, we talk about that journey from Russia to the United States, from designer to director, and now to her role as professor of theater making at the New School. We talk about authorship, collaboration, and what it means to build work that is not only aesthetically compelling, but socially meaningful. It's a conversation about growth, about responsibility, and about the power of theater to meet the world as it is. This is my conversation with Irina Kruzhilina. So, Irina, we lost touch for a while, and I've been overseas, and I started seeing your work again and realized how much it expanded from the time when I first met you. And we met at La Mama Umbria in 2008, 2009.
Something like that. That was in another life.
That wasn't another life, I know. But I remember, and I know this can't be true, I remember you were primarily a designer at that time. Were you already pushing beyond that? Or were you in the transition phase, or had you already transitioned out of that? Were you trying to not be a designer, or were you in this lovely land of theater making? There are no definitions.
Yeah, I think I was in transition, or I knew that I didn't want to only design. It's not like I ever stopped to completely design. I guess I stopped designing for other people. I design only for the work which I create. But also, I was disappointed in the definition of design and design as a role in the States, as it's very different in Europe and Russia and in Asia, where design is really equal collaborated to the director, and it's usually director designer team rather than director playwright team, where I come from. And the role of design was definitely much more important in Russia rather than in the States. So I grew up with theater, which was very design driven, where design would tell a story, maybe for a reason that I grew up in Soviet, so you could not use a lot of words.
Yeah.
Because you would simply go to jail. So the story was really told through design and through metaphor of design. And when I moved to the States, where the playwright is definitely the boss, then it's really the story is told through the words, and then the design served as some kind of secondary thing, tool, space to put the story in rather than to tell the story itself. So I found that the designers were really serving the needs rather than doing their own thing. So what I realized that I was trained and grew up as a storyteller. And if design storyteller is not the primary, then I wanted to figure out how I could be both director and designer and see how to tell the story in a more indirect way, I guess, which is interesting for the word director. Yeah, in Russia, again, it's regisseur, which
Regisseur.
is which is very different from director. And the playwright is actually a dramaturg. So in Russian language, that's the playwright. So all the roles are completely different. I've met you when I was young, I graduated from CalArts, and I was designing and doing some directing, very simple directing work for a few years. And I just started getting more training in directing after I graduated.
And I'm just trying to remember the trajectory myself here. Were you already working like with Mabel Mines and La Mama at that point, or was the Umbria kind of the way into those places?
No, I was already working with Mobile Minds and with other companies, which was interesting. I mean, I was hired for Disney while I was in grad school, for a massive parade with millions and millions of dollars to design that. And Disney could not get me a working visa. And I was like, okay, if Disney could not get me a
Well,
working visa with all
then I'm
the
screwed.
lawyers, I'm completely screwed. But then Ruth Malanchuk called me when I was also still in grad school and said, why don't you come and work with Mobile Minds? So that and Mobile Minds, where design and collaboration was really important, and where they did not work, okay, let's take this play and just stage the play, but rather find interpretation of the play, was really hopeful. I think if I didn't start working with Ruth, I would have left. So I was thinking, should I stay in the States or not? But when she called me, I was, yeah, of course. And so that's again working with them and finding my way as a leading artist, or at least as important as other artists, because she brought designers on day one, composers, designers. Was it can work here too. It can work in the US too. I just need to get some more additional training, and that's. I went to La Mama, I went to Belgrade, to Dark Theatre, and many other training grounds, and got what I wanted out of that, and that's how we've met.
That's
I
how we met.
remember you really well.
Okay, so 2008, 2009, were you there with Castellucci, or were you there?
I came a week after Castellucci. I
Okay,
came with
2009.
Kamagenkas, yeah.
Yeah,
So in that second week.
Kamagenkas. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not a bad summer. Kamagenkas and Romeo Castellucci. Not too bad.
Not too bad, no.
So, can you talk a little bit then about, I mean, having this amazing background, international work, and then that switch in the mind of going, but I want to tell the story as well. I mean, they're not going to allow me to tell a story because of the way the system works here. So, not necessarily when you started to call yourself a director, but when you started to realize, oh, maybe I don't have the skill set that will allow me to quote unquote direct. And when the kind of the magpie, like I need to seek out my own kind of grad school began.
It's an interesting question because, again, I think I grew up with the best theater which exists in the world. So my training really came from there in many ways, and then seeing a lot of great performances and collaborating with people. But there were a lot of times when I would try to work with a director, like, I can do better. I was like, where did you go to grad school? Oh, I went to like NYU or wherever. And nothing against it, but like there was nothing what I could not do. So I wanted to learn very specific skills. That's why, I went on Bogart's Suzuki and viewpoints. Like that is something I'm not a performer. So I needed to actually understand the performer's language rather than the
Right.
director's language,
Okay.
because being a visual artist and grow up with theater where I grew up is I know how to create composition really, really well. Again, if you look at some Tadeusz Kantor's theater and so on, he was never trained as a director. I think he's one of the best directors in the world because he just looks at the painting and he says, I'm going to do the same with people, right? And I'm just going to substitute this to human bodies. And his work is exceptional. The same, with Krimov, who I work with as a designer, right? Like, he's never gotten director's training, but his father was one of the most interesting directors, and Dima is now one of the greatest directors in the world, right?
Absolutely.
So I've never had this, oh, I don't know how to do it. I think that I knew how to do it, but what I did not know is how to work with actor and feel like I'm in a performer's body. So most of the training which I needed to get was actually performance training rather than how to block a scene, because I knew how to block
You know
a
how to
scene.
do that. The visual language isn't the problem. It's the
Yeah.
live performer, the emotion, the arc of how a character. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then, designers were trained as being great dramaturgs. I can break a play in 5 minutes
Yeah,
and get all the events and name them
yeah,
and
yeah.
figure out the metaphors for that. So that is, again, like the training between directing and designing was very, very similar. It's just how to be on stage was something what I didn't know. So, and I realized that I can't direct people until I understand what people who would direct feel on stage.
Gotcha, gotcha. And did you ever feel? Did the acting bug ever?
Not at all. Never wanted to be on stage at all. I had to a few times, and I want to get out of there.
Yeah. So then what was the origin story? Like what brought you to the theater? Like how did you again, you are surrounded by the best theater in the world that so many people aren't ever going to be able to see. What brought you to the stage and kept you there? Little Irina, how did she get to where you are today?
I think back at home, I just seen a lot of performances, so we had to go to watch 1 or 2 performances a week with school, and just it
What a
was a
privilege.
part of
God.
it was an unbelievable. It was a part of, growing up. And then a part of youth, we didn't have many restaurants or anything. And in fact, like people would not spend money on those things, but they would spend money on the theater. And so, and the theater was really great. So in school, I would go all the time. And I just remember, and we had all these strange theaters like a puppet theater, state theater, and then we had children's musical theater, which was unbelievable. It was called The Blue Bird, and it was started by Natalia Sats, who spent most of her life in gulags. And when she got out, she started that theater. And so there were all these extraordinary figures and legends, and you just learn about them. I remember going to the theater with school, and because the performances were always a bit long. For some reason, I just remember going in the winter because I remember the fruits, in Soviet we had like bananas and mandarins in the winter and like strawberries in the summer. So I just remember the smell of like mandarins in that theater because we couldn't survive until the break and we would start picking up mandarins, and it's just the smell before intermissions. And somehow that smell mixed with music and beautiful visuals, I want to do. It was really the magic, and whatever visual means and the sensorial experience, if it's, listening to music or smelling mandarins, it didn't matter. That experience I would never forget, and I just wanted to be a part of that world. So it was very much a part of my life. And then my uncle was a film director, so I was always exposed to actors and his life and what it means to sacrifice certain things in life to be a director and to
Mhm.
live in this world. And I had no problems with those sorts of sacrifice, which is quite interesting. Still don't. I mean, I miss my days off or evenings or hanging out, but I don't have this idea of having 9 to 5 job, children waiting for you at home. I want a dog, but like otherwise, I can't imagine retiring. Like all those things have never been a part of my dreams.
The work is fulfilling. The work is literally filling of you. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you so I want to ask another question, but I'm going to come back to this. Is so then you went to Cal Arts. So from Russia to Cal Arts. Why America? You've got this. You've got the best theater in the world around you. You. There's obviously some amazing training that you could have done there. Why Cal Arts?
It's very simple. So there are actually two things why I decided to move. I did not move here to become a director or designer to get education. I moved here because I needed to get out.
Understood. Yeah.
One thing to get out was, and I left in 2000. Moscow was the place to be. Nobody was leaving. I mean, all the theater directors and everyone started leaving 2022, right, when the
Yeah.
war started, but not
Yeah.
before that. It was phenomenal theater, very well theater, very comfortable life. But I just graduated college and I wanted to try something new. And I had a boyfriend who lived in America, and we liked each other, but we've never met in America. It would be somewhere else, and it was romantic. We broke up, I think, 2 days after I moved here because, wow,
Fine.
this is not the same person. And then, yeah, do I move home? I don't, I'm already here. I'm 24. I want to start something, and I applied to several colleges. Everybody accepted me. I was like, wow, that's easy. Uh, and I got a full ride everywhere I applied, so I went. But I think the second reason is more serious. So in 1999 at 11:55 p.m., where usually, all the Russians watch TV and the president comes and plays a Santa Claus kind of thing and says congratulations. All of a sudden, instead of Yeltsin, who was an absolute drunk, a new guy shows up. This tiny, ugly, little eyes person who I've never heard about, who nobody ever elected, and says that he's the new president. And he gives a speech which just gave shivers to us. And I remember I was at my cousin's and we just looked at each other like, wow, this is 1952 again. And I'm out of here. It was really somehow I felt that it was gonna change. And it hasn't changed for a few years, but there was something in the area already when again, I'm 24, I'm just started. Um, I got out, and I'm really glad I did get out back then. And when I came here, I was like, okay, what are the opportunities? What could be here? Or what can keep me here? Because I'm not a loser. And just because I dumped my boyfriend doesn't mean that I need to go.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, you've been back home, and that little beady-eyed guy 26 years later is still there.
Yeah.
But I think one of the important things in your bio, which I love seeing, is Ukrainian mother, Georgian father, and very aware of the politics of what is going on now since 2000, but also since 2022. And um, you did mention, and I'd love to talk about this, but also continue to talk about your path. Krimov had to leave the country as well, and now he's here and everywhere else, and what a blessing we have to finally see his work and see what he can do. Um, has it been an exodus since 2000 and continuing on of artists leaving the country and that's not fleeing, but like finding and keeping their voice?
They definitely left in 2022, right? 2022, 2023, not before that, because it was such a phenomenal place. The audience was extraordinary. I stopped going. My last time was before pandemic. But every time I would go, there was no way to get a theater ticket. And I'm saying 400 theaters in the center of Moscow. Tickets were insanely expensive. Tuesday evening, everything is sold out. Like I remember last time going with my partner, like, what are we gonna do? And we just went to see students' performance, right? Like the audience is sophisticated, interesting, work is unbelievable. So people were staying, and there was a lot of money in there. And I think that some of the directors and artists were closing their eyes on what was going on. They never said anything. Most of people never said anything until after the war started, honestly. um, they were just doing the thing, and which is interesting to me because from here it was clear where it was going, but there, even after 2014, everyone stayed. In fact, there were a lot of Ukrainians who stayed in Russia after 2014 who were working in the theater. So that's also interesting. People really didn't know how far it can go because you could still protest, right? Like when I'm thinking about 2016, there were still protests, open protests, Navalny, Nemtsov, everyone who is killed. They were able to still go on the streets. So, no, people were really not leaving until it was clear. And that happened in February of 2022. That was really clear. And everyone who could ran, but we also need to understand that not everyone is privileged to run, to have a green card, to have an American passport. Many of who do have them, to have a job. So some people stayed, and then some people stayed and they betrayed. It's very complicated. I think it's more complicated than we think.
Of course. I wonder, I mean, it is not at all the same situation, but as I've been overseas for the past 16 years, and I get to look at America through a lens of an international, be overseas, be the American guy, and then I come back right before the election last year, and I do start to look around and wonder, as you were thinking in 2000, of like, huh, something has changed, something is different, but it'll go back, right? It'll be something else, and knock on wood, who knows? So out of Cal Arts, design, already seeing the difference between a designer-director relationship. Can you talk, I mean, I would love to talk about this more, because one of my mentors is Jean-Guy Lecointe, who was Peter Brook's designer for 30 years. And so, like, I have this same mentality of, like, I would love to be collaborating with designers like this. I'm not as interested. I don't think this is a surprise to a lot of people who hear me on the podcast. I'm not as interested in the playwright, that working relationship. There's only one playwright that I work with, and he will listen to this podcast and he'll know. I made the mistake on my first weekend at Columbia of telling the playwrights I usually work with dead playwrights, and they all just kind of said, like, "Okay, great, then we won't be working without him." And that was a big detriment that I had. But that director designer relationship feels so natural, and yet over here it feels so, I don't even want to say unnatural. It feels almost like there are barriers in place for that to happen. Can you speak more to that? Because I can't quite crack the egg of, like, why can't I have a designer in the room with me at all times, other than financially that they're doing 100,000 different jobs at the same time while I only get to do one?
Yeah, I think it's just about finding the right one, right? Because I think that the designer who is interested in that collaboration wouldn't do 100 shows a year, right? Would might do one or might do two, but where they're treated as co-director, co-author, and so on. It's interesting because in Europe, right, we use the word scenographer.
Right.
Here, that word is not used because scenographer is not always a title, but it's really a job description, and it is in between design and director. And I think that here it's not used because designers then will be stepping on the toes of directors, right? So when you look at what is scenography, and there are great books about this, it's really manipulation and orchestration of all visual elements on stage, which include movement and blocking, to create certain meaning and experience for the audience. So here it will be right away, but that's director's job, and in some places it will be it's designer's job. I think that these two things are so intertwined that maybe finding sometimes a collaboration where sometimes designer directs and director designs could be really interesting, but it's really about learning from one another and complementing one another and fighting with one another. And here the design is really served to the director, and many of whom are not good. And if many directors are not good, why should designers be good? But they're really, it's the training thing. So I've never trained designers. I have no interest to train them. I only train directors. I teach directors. I teach directing. I teach design to directors. I teach scenography. I teach devising, anything you can imagine, from directing Shakespeare to devising site-specific work. And I train directors how to design, I guess, or how to work with a designer, which is a completely different training from most schools where it's, just tell the designer your inspirations and let them do that. When I designed, I designed, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 shows in the States. I would have directors come in with sketches, like, kidding me. So I would never work with that. And I think because of my accent and my background and some respect which I get from people, I know that people are sometimes scared of me for whatever reason, even at La Mama Umbre, because I'm still in touch with my aunt and so on. I was like, man, what did you think about me? I was scared of you when I met you. So I think I'm using it a bit, even when I was designing, the director would just not go against my proposals. And so my proposals would always really affect the staging. So then you're asking who is directing, who is designing, right? If you're deciding to put a rack stage on 45 degrees, which is not legal in America but allowed in other countries, and all movement and blocking is changing, then who is actually the director? But here it's really, you know, whose decisions are these? So I think it's allowing for that or inviting that, because at the end, the work will be better, right? It's not who is the author, which he is a playwright anyway, but who is, right? Like, what is it that you can sacrifice of your own ego, which is very difficult, extremely difficult. I've been purely directing for the last 10 years, and my ego is growing and growing, of course. When in fact, when I work with designers, that if I don't design my own shows, I kind of have a very clear idea of what I want to do, but which is not good. It's very interesting how I changed in that way.
Do you have people design your shows? Do you have other people come in and design?
I will in this next show, but the last one I designed the space myself, but not the costumes, not the lights. I had an extraordinary projection designer. So when the space does not have much, then to me video is everything, and I know nothing about video. So then the collaboration is massive, and I need a really, really good video person who I treat as a director for sure, who I listen to. I worked with Peter Ukrainian in the last show, and I'm listening to him. Whatever he brings up, sure, give me an advice. So I love very strong collaborators.
I've been my own scenographer for probably 20 years as well, but I've never tried to learn. I've never touched on lights. So I always have a lighting designer. And that's my one kind of collaborator that I ever have, with the exception of the show that I'm currently working on, which I have a full student design team. And this 20-year hiatus of like being the full
That's
visual,
hard.
it's so hard
It's hard.
because
I don't know how to do it.
especially because it is that what you're talking about, that American system of designer, which is, here's my design, there you go, I'm done. Or like, no, there's a collaboration here. Why aren't you in the room with us? You'll see that this isn't going to work. What else can you do? What else can you bring in? I love that. That's fantastic. We're not having those conversations at all.
Again, it's the training, right? It's the
Yeah.
training. Collaboration is not taught. Everyone talks about collaboration. Nobody knows what it is. And right now, I'm lead MFA program, which is collaborative, right? And even there, like we just closed students' thesis projects. I mean, for 2.5 years, they learn collaboration and they still fighting all the time. So nobody wants to collaborate, but everyone is talking about collaboration.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to teach, right?
Yeah, of course it is. But it's so vitally necessary, not just for our profession, but my God, for life, for our country, for the world. We need to be able to, like, you give, I give, somebody's got to bend. A third thing is going to be created out of your idea and the other person's idea. I'm reminded of Anne Bogart tells the story of, she was going and I can't remember the name of the designer or what the theater was, but she came in with the idea for Midsummer Night's Dream, and she wanted it to be in 1930 Great Depression Dust Bowl, and she had this whole like Grapes of Wrath kind of idea, and she presented it, and then the designer came back, and the entire set was mirrors. And she was like, "That's it. Yes, beautiful. You've got it," which is the exact opposite of what she asked for. But it was that third idea that unlocked, because she was still going to direct it as if it was Grapes of Wrath in the actors' bodies.
Right.
But you don't need to represent that. That doesn't need to be there. You can unlock it with something else.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your school. Can you tell us a little bit about, because you started this program, right?
Yeah, we co-developed this program with there were a few people. It was a committee who developed the program. It's still young, so we just graduating our third cohort. When it's young, it's messy, right? uh, but at the core is that it's multidisciplinary program. It's a MFA program at the new school. It's small cohort, anything between, I don't know, 8 and 13 people. We have 14 this year, and it's big. And these are people from different walks of life, from artists. We had a wonderful visual artist, to conceptual artists, to directors, playwrights, actors, and so on. And it's really, people do have somewhat tracks. They choose, I want to be, let's say, director, writer, but I'm also going to be everything else, which is quite wonderful. I think the most interesting thing is absolutely unique classes. So when we started creating it, like, okay, what are the really cores of making theater? And this is body, space, story, right? It's a body, talent, story, and space. That's it. And then some knowledge is global drama and so on. So these are really our classes, at least in the beginning, the foundational classes. It's not acting, but it's what do I need in my body, including the voice. How do I exist in space? And it doesn't matter if you're a writer, director, or performer. Nobody teaches space. So I invented this class, which is called Space, and then there is Space 2. There is not a single person in the country who teaches it. So we, like, sometimes I look at the performances, especially people who graduate from other schools. They're afraid to be in space, and they're afraid to touch things. I invented another class, Impact of Design and Performance, to actually help performers understand what they can do with things on stage and how to partner with things, not other humans, because I don't know how much longer I can watch one person speaking to another person. So I was in one fancy school, doesn't matter which one, and I'm just looking at the graduate pieces. And I know that, in fact, before they go on stage, they are taught how to not break things on stage, how to, like, be careful with them. And they grow up with the concept, and of course, like, active, scenography and so on, where unless this is going to be used, broken, burned, put in like some kind of poison on that, you do not put it on stage, right? You just do not. And here there are these decorations, and actors carefully walking around decoration, and directors teaching actors how to not touch decoration. It's a nightmare. We have all these classes which are absolutely unique, and I think they're collaborative in their core, right? Like, again, my language between the things around me, my language between the body and the voice. What is the story? What are the components of the story? And then we have a class which is collaborative making, where the whole cohort are making things together based on something. So it is devising, but I think it's more than devising, because they really need to come up with the whole concept rather than with a scene or something itself. So there was a half a year, 15 week courses, and they're different every time. And it's also project based. So we're bringing different artists every semester to develop project with students. So students also get exposed to many different artists. Again, not to direct a piece with them, right? How we were doing it. Colors. We're not inviting directors. We're inviting leading artists who could be doing a podcast with students, or could be doing some kind of show, or who can go into community and engage community and create some kind of live interaction, embodied research with them. So we really expose our students to different ways of making a work, whether it's theater work, installation work, it really doesn't matter. Again, we're new, we just auditioned for the 4th year. So this thesis project was definitely better than the one before, and many times better than the one before. So I think we're on the right track. And again, thinking about, the climate once students graduate, you can't do one thing anymore. And thinking about my own practice, because I devise, I write, I direct, and I design. This is the school which I would have loved at 10, 25 years ago.
I was just thinking the exact same thing. I was just like, I loved Columbia, but like, in terms of what I do and what I love doing and what I'm doing now teaching, it's just like, I'm not a director, and nor would I want to be. And it's such a rare thing. There are theater, we would call this a theater making course, right? Is it MFA in theater making? Yeah. But that's such a rare thing in the United States. It's very common in the UK and excuse me, in Europe.
Northern Europe,
Yeah,
it's all like dance and Dutch, of course, and Germans with Henry Goebbels, right? Like
yeah.
they all created it a long time ago.
I mean, you go to any festival overseas, and this is the type of work you're going to be seeing, not the type of
Absolutely.
work. The type of work we're making in America is really the only type of work that we're making in America. It's you want to see
Yeah,
America?
it sucks. It sucks.
It kind of does. I mean, every once in a while something will come around or come out of it, but really not really. Um, yeah, I
It's
agree.
well done. Like there are all these theaters in some regional theaters. By the way, never worked in the regional theater except like Wilma once, because you just go to the well done shows, right? Like it's well directed, the money is well spent, well acted, but like doesn't really touch you. I want things which are raw, and I think what we are trying to develop in our students how to be a leading artist, not just a theater maker, right? I want to be a leading artist. I might or might not invite other people into collaboration, right? It depends on the project. But whether I'm an actor or playwright or director, all of that, I'm going to conceive it. I'm going to figure out what it is, and then I will invite other people to work with me. But I'm going to set up these frames, which are not negotiable, because that's what I want to do. So it's really how to conceive, create, perform, and I would say present your own work, right? Like we're still struggling that presenting and producing. I think those need to be really equal pieces of the cake if you want to develop your own work. They're essential. So, I'm in addition to be a director and I write my own pieces, devise my own pieces, I had to learn how to produce. So I have a small nonprofit theater company, Visual Echo, and we produce the things. We usually co-produce with someone because we're too small, and my vision is really very large and expensive and involves a lot of people. So we always work with co-producers. But I had to learn what it means to produce your own thing and how to partner with other entities to co-produce it, which is its own animal and it's hard.
And there's an art to it as well. Like the business side of it is also an artistic practice, and the more that artists can understand that and not think that it's like I do my art and then there's this business stuff, the better that they are, because you got to sell the idea, you got to present the idea, and that's all artistic practice. Your work right now, the projects you are working on and have been working on for the past couple of years, it feels so absolutely necessary and timely, obviously, and it must ask so much of you and your makers and your collaborators. Can you speak about what it is that you are you are currently working on and that has taken your life for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I guess I will speak about two projects. One which I completed, although I expanded and restarted it in a different form, and the other project which came out of the first. So after the war broke down, I really was lost and was not sure what to do. So the first thing which I was doing, I started supporting Ukrainian artists. So I designed some things, I dramaturged some things. And some of those artists, in Ukraine, some of them moved here, some of them are in Europe, but that was really, really important to me. And at the same time, I noticed outside of all this intelligentsia and directors and theater folks and writers fleeing Russia, that there were a lot of other people who were fleeing Russia, who were activists, who were normal folks, who were just completely against the war, for who it was not safe to be there. So I had to notice it. And when I noticed it, I wanted to do something with them. So I developed a piece which is called Space Bridge with children who moved here with their families. Very normal, simple kids, except for maybe one. They all moved here in the first half a year after the war broke down, and they came here through US-Mexico border. They all lived in shelters, and nobody gave a damn about them. Not only nobody gave a damn about them, they were also disliked, bullied in schools, and hated because they came from Russia, as well as their parents. And that was painful. because, again, this whole idea that there's not a single good Russian and many other things is complicated in many ways. But that was painful because they were children. So you start understanding if they are bullied in school by 10, 11 years old, it means that comes from the parents. And the only way to actually show that the other is not necessarily evil, even if the country or the government is evil, is very important in America. The way we treated Japanese after the war, the way we treated Asian people after COVID, right? So we always find that the other, which we need to go against.
Yeah.
And so I developed this project with them where I connected them with American kids, because there are tons of projects with refugees and asylum seekers. But if you really ask the children what they actually want, they want to make friends. They want to speak English so they can help their parents to fill out the papers, right? And so on. So we brought 10 Russian refugee kids. They're all going through, they're not legal. They're going through asylum applications, and 10 American kids into one room together, and started devising what can it be as a performance. It all started as a workshop program, but we always wanted to put it on stage. So it started as a small thing. We had 10 sessions, and then some people came, some good people came, and they saw it, and you've got to put it on stage. And my mama was supporting it as well as on guard. Half a year later, we were at Ellen Stewart Theatre. We sold it that in 2 days. All the people showed up, and half a year later, we were in Under the Radar. And another half a year later, we traveled to Art Emerson, where the same kids who've never been really on stage performed in 500 seats theater for several days, stayed in a very fancy hotel, and the only place they've stayed before were shelters. So that was really their first clean bed, individual bed. We didn't trash the hotel. The hotel was wonderful, and it was a massive, massive, massive success. So to me, is not only because it's always like whose stories you tell, where you tell the stories, who tells the stories, all this why, what, and so on. It was really whose stories people don't want to tell for whatever reason, because again, it's an awful war. What Russia is doing is criminal, beyond criminal, beyond criminal. I hope that Putin will go to Hague or die, will be killed. I don't know. I'm waiting for that. The whole world is waiting for that. But we've got to figure out how to have some empathy towards children who came with parents, and they came here because if they go back, they will be jailed. So we start painting them with brushes which they escape, and we can't do that. So those stories are not popular. That's the thing. They're not in fashion. So to me, to go against that and put them at my own risk and risk of the producers, because it's complicated to put those stories, was challenging. Was definitely challenging, and I was worried what was going to happen. But people loved it. As soon as they show up on stage, you are there. Yeah, with those stories. So a couple things came out of this. One thing is that I wanted to expand it and work with children, with asylum-seeking children from different cultures. So we just did the first iteration of Space Bridge Global, where we worked with kids from 6 different countries. So there were many languages in one room. And we had kids from Ecuador, Venezuela, China, Georgia, Russia, and so on. And it was a workshop program, which was really wonderful. So I just closed it last week. And the second big thing which came out of Space Bridge, there was one really cool scene. It was like 5-minute puppet scene, actually, where American kids and Ellen Lauren, she was a part of the performance, was, who was training Miss Suzuki on viewpoints. And I was... If people think they're scared of me, try Ellen.
Try Ellen. Yeah, right.
My God. I'm like, oof. So she's still the same. She's still the same. She's the same on stage. She's very tough. But Adam, she has the biggest heart.
She does.
And the kids, we spent 2 years together with her and the kids. And the kids just love her. She was a mom to them. And it was incredible to be working with her. And she on stage really connects the kids, and she's this link which brings them together. So in that puppet scene where Ellen and a few kids, the American kids, they stage an asylum interview, an asylum court hearing, actually, not an interview. And it's fabulous. And we did a lot of research. And one immigration lawyer came to see Space Bridge at La Mama, and he wrote to me saying, never in my life did I see such an accurate illustration of what's happened in the court hearings, in asylum court hearings and immigration court hearings in 3 minutes. You should do something with that. And then also during that process, we discovered that there are serious differences between different judges, how they grant asylum, and that even in New York, which is the most liberal, one of the most liberal states, and grants a lot of asylum, there is one judge which grants 98% of asylum, and on the same floor, there is another judge who only grants 13. And you start asking these questions, what makes them, stamp one way or the other? So between those two things, I became really, really interested in what's happening in immigration court hearings. And we went to a few of them because you can actually attend, they're public. And the whole new world opened up. And before I knew it, I was invited to the Asylum Conference in New York and spoke about Space Bridge and met all these extraordinary judges and lawyers and so on, and started developing idea, what would it be to put it on stage? And one of the most important immigration lawyers in the country who won the first case on domestic violence, Karen Masala, who is at UC Berkeley, she told me, you've got to do this piece because nobody knows what's happening there. It's like a black hole. Judges make certain decisions and then they kind of disappear. So you've got to go and you've got to figure out how to put it on stage. So I started working with Huey as a consultant and many other people and trying to put it on stage. So the piece has stories of immigrants, stories of judges, stories of ICE attorneys, stories of immigration court interpreters, politicians, and so on. And they bring all those different stories to life with a question of who is responsible for this ridiculous crisis which is happening now. And it's a very difficult question to answer. It's the system which was set up to fail and to hurt those who are most vulnerable. So this is what I'm working on now. One of the pieces which I'm working on now, I just reconnected with some immigration judges and had several meetings, and 9 of them are working as my consultants now. They were all fired by Trump's administration on December 11, 2025, unemployed at the moment, and they're really excited about helping me writing this play. So this is amazing. One of them offered her robes to actors. I was like, what would it be for an actor to wear a robe of somebody who was on a bench for 15 years, and I just find that extraordinary. So it's really, I would say, my work in the last 4 or 5 years really became, how do you put the stories which are important on stage? What does research mean? What does embodied research mean? How do you place yourself in a situation, because there is no way I would have done this piece if I were not present at the court hearings, if I were not speaking at the asylum conference and so on, or didn't know the law. How far you can risk, what you're doing, and what are your collaborators, and what does it mean to put performers and non-performers on stage? So, and what is the form which is educating people, which I never thought was important in theater. I always thought, no, it needs to be emotional and, beautiful, and you just need to grab them and they should start crying. No, educating is also important. It's just, what is the form which will also be so visceral and so beautiful that people will engage?
Yeah. I did a project for the COP climate conferences, and we found that, as everybody knows, like nobody cares about the science, like especially at COP. Like the science is there's no debate. There may be a debate inside of the United States with some people, but like there's no debate on the science. But it's the information is not getting through. It's not passing through the filter. It's not touching the person. It's not touching the heart. But when you humanize it, when you get to the core of something, it bypasses all of that stuff, and just seeing another human being, whether it's a real human being with these children, or you are staging it with an actor playing one of these roles, it bypasses that thing. How do you build trust with collaborators when the work is personal or community based? I can only imagine these like you're talking about the kids being bullied, or you talk about these asylum seekers that, how do I trust you, you theater maker, to go and put my story on stage? That you're not going to manipulate it or use it for your own ends, but that this is actually telling the truth of my story so that people can be educated. How do you build that trust with these collaborators?
Yeah, I think these are two very different projects, right? Because with the kids, those were the kids telling their own story.
Yeah.
However, like the big story also, which was there, is that we took their stories and we combined together with the kids. We said, let's write a story of one girl who has, all your stories, how they came to America.
Mm.
And we just started looking at their stories, and they chose the name of this girl, the family, how she traveled, and so on. So that distances themselves, right? But then there would be scenes where they would speak about their own experiences in the States, about their lives in the shelter, and so on. And that is different, right? What I noticed is you want to work with people who want to tell their stories, who are hungry for other people to know that that exists. And those were definitely the kids. They wanted to be seen. They wanted to tell their stories, as well as the stories, I guess, of their parents, right? That this is what's happening. And the stories in that kids, because it's also a story about the friendship with American kids, is different. Maybe it would have been different if I were just doing a story of these refugees, but a lot of that was fictionalized, and having Ellen been there and having a fictional character was definitely would distance you, and then you also have something very personal. I worked with them for 2 years. I was their friend, their mom. We feed them, we take them places. We became a family. It was maybe the hardest thing in my life to say goodbye to them. They captured my heart. And for Ellen, too. In the very last scene of the last performance in Boston, they just started crying on stage. There is this absolutely gorgeous scene where I asked American kids to write letters of support to immigration courts. Why should their friends stay in America? And so it's each American kid goes forward and says, well, Lily should stay in America because she's a wonderful actor and she has this beautiful style. And then Lily would come forward. And they're so touching because you don't watch the stories of the kids. You watch their friendships and you watch what they imagine will happen in their life and how this world could be kinder. That's really what you watch. You watch the magic of that. It's not about them. It's about what if, and what we need to do so that what if happens. And it's also a very beautiful show visually. So that I think is a big thing. But they feel protected. And in terms of people who I'm working with now, so the refugees and immigrants who I've interview, first of all, we're going to again combine their stories, right? So, for example, we'll have this gay man from Nigeria as a character, and it's going to be combined from 2 stories of people who we interviewed, plus Board of Immigration Appeal reports, plus many court hearings which we observed, and so on. So it will be fictionalized, right? I can't call it documentary theater. I don't quite know what it is, but it's really combined of many. And they really wanted to speak. So the people who were called, there were so many of them who just want to know that this exists because people have no clue. People have no clue at all. And in terms of judges and immigration lawyers, oh man,
They
you
wanted to speak.
send one email, you get calls immediately,
Yeah.
in a minute. Like from the theater, if I email a designer, hey, are you interested to collaborate? You will hear something in 2 weeks. These people, I can't interview them all. I don't have time. There is like a line of people who want to speak. And I can't, and every meeting I say half an hour, and they're 2 hours. I just don't have time to speak to them. They want to unload.
Yeah.
We talked to one ICE attorney who left during Trump won, and he just, do you have enough time? I was like, sure. He's like, I need to tell you everything. And it was like 2 hours a long interview. And then he's actually an actor now, not in my piece, but he became this film TV actor who plays FBI characters because he's so good.
Yeah.
So people have the need for the stories to be told in a different way because it's not enough to write them on the papers. We need to write them on the papers. People need to go on the streets. People need to show them in the theater. Cartoons, it does not matter. Whatever form we can use for people to take action and to change the policy which is happening now, right? And it's never been just one or another. When you think about women's movement or so on, right? It's always been art, law, street. So I do street and art. You don't want me to write the law.
Oh, maybe. It sounds like the socially engaged idea. It's the better idea. Where is I love asking this question of artists, and it may not be formalized or you're not be able to articulate it fully, but the why of making this kind of art, like socially, this has got to be some of the hardest stuff you've ever made in your entire life. And it costs not just your time, but like like you said, like you were devastated when you had to say goodbye to these kids. Like living with these stories that are they're not fictionalized stories. These are real people that you have met. Why do that? Why put yourself through that? There's that's the origin story kind of thing that I'm talking about, of like something from way back when, like, with me, like injustice like hurts me. And so I want a world that is empathetic and kind and working toward that. So it's all about community for me. And so the work that I'm making, when I'm making the work that I call my work, I can point to it and say, oh, there's a through line back to this moment in my life. Can you make that through line for your life of saying, like, of course I've landed here because this has been a through line in my life?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking it. Would like to talk about your through line a bit more too. Why injustice hurts you so much as well? Oh my God. Well, again, I was born in Soviet, right? So, Adam, I'm living through deja vu now. What's happening in America, I've lived through that.
Yeah.
Twice, right? So I was born in Soviet, then it became a free world, and then it was taken away. People in this country do not believe that it will get there, that we have enough checkpoints, that every 4 years there will be a swing back. I don't believe in it. Seeing what happened in Russia and in a city like Moscow is, we can go that far. I think that with the work which I'm doing now, and especially after the new elections, is just to make sure we don't get there. Right after the new elections, I felt that people were so passive. I remember the first Trump one when my students were devastated. You don't see people having coffee on the streets the next morning. And this time I go outside, it's like Renaissance. Like nothing happened. And then nobody goes and protests in the beginning. My students are scared. And it terrified me, and it terrified a lot of Russian and Ukrainian activists, which I know. We were actually angry. We were literally angry. We're like, it's way too early for this paranoia. Like, even if one person out of millions gets arrested, it's just one person, one student out of millions. That's not enough for you to put the mask on, for people to not know your faces, and so on. So I think that is one of the biggest things. I don't want to end up in Russia again. I am here. I'm here to stay. I can't go to Russia. I will get arrested if I go to Russia, right? Like it's not possible for me. I don't want this country to end up like that country, and I know it's possible. I don't consider myself activist. I think it's a tricky word. It's funny when my students apply, you read like their applications, everyone is multidisciplinary artist and activist. Jesus, give me an actor. Like, sometimes you just need a good actor, but everyone is an activist. So I can't call myself activist. I know people who are real activists. I work with them. God, we're so lazy compared to them. But I know how to do theater, and I know how to work with people, and I know how to make things beautiful, and I know how to grab attention of people. So that's important to break through this passivity. And I think that people in audience in American theater is quite passive. And to wake them up, like even when we did the reading of No Dystopia, there were some people who came to me like, but what's call to action? Who do I call? What do I do now? And that was quite amazing. So I think if we do that theater. So my through line has really been born in a place where you can't do anything, but there is beautiful art. Having a youth in a place where everything is possible, and then knowing that it will disappear and watching it disappearing. And then coming here and watching it disappearing here is really, really personal. It's really personal. Seeing the other, seeing black and white, seeing betrayal. I mean, like that people are now in this country would say something about someone else, putting those people in trouble. I mean, that's Stalin's time. You know, people would go to gulags because a neighbor would say something about a neighbor, and that is happening here now. And that is terrifying to me. I don't know. So something needs to shift. And I was asking a couple of my consultants, advisors, like when I saw what they're doing, you know, there's a people who work in detention centers. There's a people who like we do sleep. I tell we don't sleep. We do sleep compared to them, right? Or working with the judges, and I remember asking one amazing policymaker or advisor, "How can I help you?" And she looked at me and said, "You're so stupid. It's not how you can help me. It's how we can help you." Because we actually need you. If it happened to be you who's doing this work and you have a reason to do it, we're going to do everything we can for this work to exist. So now I feel I have responsibility of the people who trust me, and I've got to push through and do it there for them and for myself as well. Definitely for myself, because I don't want to die in Soviet Union in this. In the city which is called New York. I don't want it to become Main Street, USA, or Moscow on Hudson, right?
Yeah.
That's not a good thing right now. The store is great. The grocery store is great. The film is great, but I hope it won't become one. And I see the patterns.
I mean, when I worked with climate scientists, I said the same thing. How can I help you? And they said the exact same thing. It's just like, we don't need your help. We want to help you because you're the one who's going to tell the story. They're not listening to us anymore. And it became a relationship of sometimes I stand in front of them, sometimes they stand in front of me, but we're always shoulder to shoulder figuring out. Yeah, that's so absolutely true. Um, so maybe not politically, but what gives you hope? What's exciting you about theater and art making in the world?
Yeah, definitely the young generation. The kids who I worked with don't see, for them, problems which we put on them and
Uh-huh.
tell that this is what it is actually not a problem. They don't think the ways we think, for sure.
Thankfully.
The imagination of the kids definitely gives hope. The imagination of artists give me hope. My own imagination often gives me hope. My students sometimes give me hope.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. I know that very well. Sometimes they do.
You know, like really, they need it. They want a lot. They ask for a lot. But they do give me hope. Does theater give me hope? I can't answer it, Adam. Honestly, I can't answer it. Some does, some really doesn't. But the young generation definitely does. I think we're gonna be okay. The world, I think we did an excellent job destroying this world, and we continue doing it. But I think they're gonna figure it out because they are imaginative and beautiful, and we just need to step back. We just need to step back, and that's how I feel about the kids who I worked with. You know, very interesting thing, like the reason for the idea, or not just the reason, the idea of doing Space Bridge came from this, also from my childhood, from a person who was very important in my life, an American activist, 12 years old activist, Samantha Smith, a girl from Maine, who wrote a letter to Yuri Andropov during the Cold War, why he wanted to destroy the world, because she was afraid to go to sleep, just like we were afraid to go to sleep. So I was 9 at the time, or 8 at the time, And he invited her to come to Soviet Union and see that Soviets didn't want the war. Of course, there was a lot of propaganda, but no matter what, like she saw kids her age, and she wrote back that they're like us, they actually don't want the war. And that what started the escalation of Cold War, not Gorbachev. It was like before that. And she proposed that Reagan and Andropov exchange granddaughters, because if they're for 2 weeks, because if granddaughters live in another country, that the president would not send a bomb. And it is so simple. And so the kids I worked with, they have the same very, very simple ideas, which we smart adults are like, given many reasons why the idea cannot be done, right? We cannot be implemented. So when I listen to them, or sometimes listen to my students' creative ideas, I was like, okay, they've got it, right? So then what is our role as their teachers or as their mentors to just guide them to believe that that is possible? I think that's what gives me hope, right? When I work with someone and I help them to understand what's possible, and I think everything in the world is possible. So proposing the solutions or helping figure out solutions, like what you're doing with science, right? Like helping to figure out simple, creative solutions to big and small problems. And once you figure it out or help to figure out, once it clicks, like, okay, we have a chance.
The adage of the three-legged stool, you need discipline, you need craft, and you need something to say. And sometimes all we can do is maybe give them craft, maybe some discipline, but that's something to say. They already have it. Yeah, you're right.
Discipline would definitely need to give them, especially students. I don't know how your students are, but I noticed in general, like my students are often late for classes. I had this kid in Spacebridge who lived by JFK in a tent, in a massive tent in a shelter, never been late to rehearsal. And then I will have like one of the new school grad students rolling out of bed, showing up 20 minutes late saying, one train stopped. I was like, I took one train.
Right.
So discipline is missing for sure.
It is a funny thing being overseas and being in not always privileged countries or countries that have the privileges that America has, never having students be late, never taking for granted. And then, you get here and it's like, yeah, the one train was late. What time did you get to the one train?
Yeah, and then understanding everyone's feeling and everyone's emotional state. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be Russian style where, Professor walks in, everybody gets up and everyone is sitting there shaking and wearing black clothes. It doesn't have to be that way. But some respectful way where we're in it together, and we should respect each other. Yeah, discipline, I can talk about this for a long time, but I think it's a wrong platform. Or another cafe.
Another coffee. But I did have a student propose this question, and it's where I start to end the podcast with this question, which she asked me in the hallway in between some devised projects one day last semester. And it seemed so simple to me, and I realized the kind of the depth of the question. And she said, "What's a show that changed you as a human? Not changed you as an artist per se. Not, oh, I saw Sleep No More, and it was really cool, and I saw what you could do with space, but like really that there was Irina the human being before seeing this, and there was Irina the human being after seeing this, and the life wasn't the same." Can you think of a project or?
Something what I saw?
Yeah.
I think the work of Mila Rao
Yeah.
definitely changed me in a way of what can theater do to human being, and how difficult it could be to sit in your seat in the theater where so many feelings come up, and when it hits you so hard and you're left with this hit at the end, right, that there is no resolution and no hope, where it definitely did something to me several times when I saw his work, because it's, yeah, what am I left with? And what do I do with the feeling which is in me now? I mean, I've seen many gorgeous shows and where I think this is like life changing, but they're not, because they're light and hopeful and they just give you energy. and his work gives you something else. It takes you to a very dark place where human beings can go, and I know I don't want to go there ever, and I want to create work which will prevent people from going there. But I am aware that those places exist in every single human being. So I would say from all of the artists, to me right now, that's what hits me
Yeah.
as a human being.
Yeah. I remember seeing 5 easy pieces and just
God.
yeah, people, there's not much, information that you can find like YouTube on that piece, but if anybody
No.
wants to go look at that piece, it's surprising. I was stunned as soon as I knew it was gonna happen, but when it happened, I was just like, "I cannot believe you got these kids on the stage to do this. I can't believe you got the parents to get." But yeah,
Yeah.
you are left there with just questions. There is no answers. Thankfully, art shouldn't, always answer everything, but the questions
Yeah, I
that
don't
you're
think
left with.
it should ever answer, but the questions which you're left with are
Yeah.
different from usually
Hey,
questions when you're
yeah,
leaving the stage.
yeah.
And I'm glad that they bring him to the States now, right? Because he's having two pieces in New York now, including Pelican Trial, and that will be in judge. And I just wonder how people will take it. It's 4 hours of listening how man raped the same woman,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just restaging of that. And he did just hate radio, it sent ads, and they just watch. It's a different reaction of the audience where everyone goes dark and quiet, and that is really where something happens inside you. I'm not a very hopeful person. I mean, I do have hope for the future, but you're born in that dark place, beautiful but dark, and then you read this really dark literature when you're really young, and once you like go through Tolstoy at the age of 10, they give you Dostoevsky. So if you believed in anything, you just hit again, and then so I like to say that Russians are already born depressed, and once they get lighter, you get the literature, you're born depressed, so
Yeah, yeah.
I connect to Miller out. I know, again, I know it's possible. I know what he's doing is from real life and it could happen to any of us. So,
When he took
yeah.
over National Theatre Ghent, he made a manifesto that I make my directors all read the manifesto, like, day 1 of, like, this is an artist's, like, putting a stake down saying, "I'm never gonna be able to make this happen, but by God, I'm gonna reach for this." And I think he's done pretty well with it, and,
Can you send it to me? I don't think
yeah.
I have it. I would
It's
love to.
beautiful, and perfect Milo Rao fashion, he has 2 children reading out this manifesto. So, like, the
Of
sense of,
course.
like, this is what theater should be. This is what the theater that I'm in charge of this
Yes.
very wealthy national theater. This is what theater is going to be, and I'm gonna try and be a European leader for other national theaters to be this kind of theater.
Yeah.
So, I would
I
definitely
think he
send that.
did the same in Vienna, right? When he took over Vienna, because I was there this year. And watched a bunch of performances, of course, and I know Mila. And it was really interesting because after one of the performances, I remember having a talk with two white European dudes, one from Belgium, one from, I don't know, Germany or Holland, which is weird because they should be liberal and cool. But they just discussing that this festival used to be festival of excellent theater and that people are pissed at Mila because the idea of what excellence is for him is very different. And the idea for me, what excellence is very, very different, right? Uh, what is the scale? What is, So a lot of people are pissed at him. And I'm like talking to these guys and they really guess what he's doing, not against, but criticizing it. And I really think that they believe that Hungary and Vienna is still like the center of this Hungarian Roman Empire. It's like, that disappeared many years ago. They still think that this is the center of the world. And because it used to be also the excellent festival of excellent theater, that used to be the center of theater in the world, in this empire which disappeared many years ago in the world, run by white men. And it was like, who are you? Were you just born yesterday? So that was surprising, but I'm really glad that he's doing it, and the festival is very controversial in many ways, and it leads to conversations which are not always pretty and to conflicts which are not always pretty, and we've got to have it. No, we've got to have those conversations and conflicts. To me, that's what connects people.
Are Who are other artists that the audience should know about. It's not about, I joke with people because they always say, oh, I don't want to say somebody because I don't want to leave anybody out. It's like, it's not about who's best, but who is it that you wish people knew more about? Like, Americans don't know Milo Rao. They don't, it's one of those things,
Yeah.
but also in New York or wherever you're working, or people that are exciting to you that you wish people knew more about their work. Ultimately, this is the question of who I should try to have get on the podcast. But who do you wish people could see their work and experience their work and be changed by their work by?
Yeah, I think in terms of, so Mila is definitely in terms of social and political is very important. I think Christina Wan is doing extremely interesting projects, which are also, socially very important. And she did this food bank show, which is hilarious. And I really appreciate her and her sense of humor and the form which she's taken to do that work. And she's a wonderful performer, but also like how she connects with community to create the work is really, really interesting to me, to go to the reservations and working with people and figuring out their food and so on. It's always, again, what's embodied research, how the actor or the leading artist or the director, writer becomes a part of that, and what is the work created out of that is important. And her form, it's hilarious. Like the food bank is really fantastic. It's a karaoke show about food banks. It's at the time when, Trump cut the
Yeah,
stamp, right? So she's wonderful in terms of, I think, that nature of artists in America. In terms of physical theater visual is Jeff Sabel. He's extraordinary. Not everyone has seen his work, and I think he's absolutely extraordinary. He's doing a new piece now about clowns. They actually clowns in America and what it means, and they're premiering it on July 4th. It's I saw some walkthrough presentations and so on. It's absolutely worth, and I think they're going to Edinburgh. They were invited to go to Edinburgh International. So that's absolutely worth in terms of physical, visual world to see it. I think there is a lot of interesting work which is done with technology now, and I don't understand technology, and I wish I
same.
did. And sometimes I just think I need to like take some classes with BFA students, because even plugging into this platform, I got like anxiety. Like, oh, what do I do? My God, there is a button. Zoom, I figured out. But it's freaky. So I want to take a class, but then I feel so ashamed that I don't know how to plug the computer. So, but there is interesting, like Josh Kalp is doing interesting work, Theatre of Quarantine. So that is how the form, and again the skill which a person can have, can inspire another way of storytelling, and that started in pandemic, but how he was able to continue it after pandemic is definitely something I really appreciate and greatly respect. And then when people are asking who to watch, get out of here, go to a
Yeah,
festival. I go to two
please.
festivals every year. I'm privileged sometimes to teach there, so things are paid for, at least half of that, and so on. And I will go to one festival where things are not paid for, but I've got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So summer, because I don't teach, I don't do the program, I just, create the new work, and I go to two festivals every single summer and just watch, I don't know, 8 performances a day. It's always hit and miss, but it does not matter. It doesn't matter. And that's what I just, go be a part of the culture. There are fantastic things which are happening. Edinburgh is fantastic. A lot of misses, but some hits. Just be in a culture which appreciates the theater, and discover artists yourself. Discover artists yourself. So that's what I do. That's what I'm going to do this year again. And for as long as I'm alive, it fills the cup, right? I
It
think
does, yeah.
directors need to do it. Directors need to get out and do it.
We're constantly drawing from the well, but to go and fill that well up again and be inspired, and directors steal from wherever, and then the
Big,
artist
big time.
big
Big
time.
time.
The artistry is not in the invention, the artistry is in the stealing and then covering your tracks so that you can't tell where you stole and what you combined.
That's very smart. I'm going to use this. I think the artistry is also like, that first concept, right? The first seed is the artistry. That's when you know, okay, this is what the thing is going to be. And these are 6 frames, which I'm going to put around this. Everything else could be stolen, but that frame is something so negotiable to me, right? Where how we interact with the audience, what it is about. And when I start questioning it because I saw something cool or I came up with something in my dream, I need to get out, right? Like those are chat. So yeah, it's I think you gotta get an idea and then go and explore. Go and explore and see stuff. So that's my favorite. And every time I'm in the festival, there would be one performance like something changed at me. And then it also depends sometimes on the amount of wine you drink
It
in
does
the
help.
south of France or in Edinburgh, bad beer and terrible food. But it always like
Theater is
depends
always
on
made better
all
with
that.
alcohol. I absolutely believe that.
And with a nap if you're lucky, right? If the
Yeah,
theater
without the
is
amount of theater.
bad or well done, you just hope you fall asleep.
Irina, I could talk to you forever, and you've already talked about having another cafe meeting
Yes,
as well.
absolutely.
So we're going to make that happen. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast after your very busy week last week. I know we were trying to find the right time, and I thank you for finding that time. I so respect your artistry, and I cannot wait to see your work in person now that I'm back in the country, and I'm so glad we were able to reconnect. It's so wonderful to see you again.
Thank you, Adam. It's such a joy to reconnect after so many years. And thank you for doing this podcast. It's so important and delightful and beautiful. So I will see you in another cafe, 2D or 3D, we will see.
That's right. If this episode gave you any insight, inspiration, or even just made you smile, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts for more conversations like this. And if you're looking for guidance with a creative challenge or want to advance a dream of your own, we'd love to help. Visit boardofdirectors.world. The Board of Directors is a global constellation of theater directors dedicated to building community, sharing knowledge, and transforming the role of the director in the 21st century. We convene and curate a fellowship that fosters mentorship, artistic inquiry, and collective care, transcending borders and institutions and traditions. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of each other.